Hello, yogis. My name is Kelly, and I have a 60-minute-ish yin class for you today. For props, it is nice to be able to have a bolster or some kind of cushions. If you're at home, you could even use like couch cushions or a bed pillow. Blanket is always nice to have in case you need it. Two blocks, but again, you can find things to substitute for blocks at home if you don't have those props. So we'll be able to work, even if you don't have props today, you'll be able to still work into these shapes. So welcome. I hope you enjoy this practice. We're going to be opening different parts of the body. As we're moving through class, I'll kind of explain some of the principles of yin. If you're newer to yin, if you're a seasoned practitioner, just really ask you to listen to the body, listen to the feedback that the body is giving you. Our bodies give us quite a bit of information. It's up to us whether or not we hear them or whether we choose to ignore them. So as you're moving into the shapes today, don't be afraid of sensation. You can feel sensation in the body, and in fact, I advise you to feel sensation, to take yourself to that edge. But you definitely don't want to be feeling sharp, shooting pain or a burning sensation. Also, I ask you to try to avoid sensation in the knees. We need to be really careful with our knees as we're moving through practice. So we're going to start out today in a supported bridge, and we're going to do a sequence of some different shapes within supported bridge. So you have a couple of options with how you set up. I'll show you both ways. You can set up with a bolster, or you could set up with a block or multiple blocks underneath the sacrum. One of the most important things, though, is that whatever prop you have is underneath the sacrum. You don't want it in the lower back. You want it down low. So think kind of more closer to the tailbone. So if you're using a bolster, it's easiest usually if you kind of sit on the edge of it. Definitely bend the knees, hold on to the back of the thighs, and then just lower yourself down. Once you get down, you can adjust a little bit as you need. Now, this is what you don't want. So you don't want the bolster here and the tailbone down towards the earth. So this is creating a really big lumbar curve. And you have a lumbar curve, but we don't want to over accentuate it for long periods of time. That's not what we're doing here. So we're going to bring that bolster down a little bit farther. So this might be where you set up for your first variation of supported bridge. If you would prefer to use blocks, you'll just lie down. Again, the feet are planted, lift the hips up and place the block underneath the sacrum. And again, this block is low down here on my back, not up high. You can use two blocks next to one another. You do have the option to go up a little bit, so you could turn the block up onto the medium setting for these first couple of shapes that we take. Eventually, I will have you turn it down, but if you prefer that, feel free to be up a little bit higher. So what you do with the arms is completely up to you. You could have the arms down by the side. You could find cactus arms, or you could reach the arms up over the top of the head and maybe even have a diamond shape here in the hands. We'll just stay here for a couple of moments, breathing and feeling this first variation of supported bridge. So we have a gentle inversion here. Our hips are over our heart, getting all the benefits without having to stand on our heads. This one eventually will also start to work into the hips. We're going to work some hip extension and just a couple of different variations as we move through. So if you are newer to yin yoga, we have 4 key principles of yin yoga. The first is to explore a skillful edge. It's kind of what I was talking about with having your body listen or having your body talk to you, giving you feedback and information and you listening to that. So you approach the edge slowly. When you find sensation, maybe you stay and wait there. The point of yin yoga is not to push yourself into pain or to run right up to that edge. Take your time, find the edge, and then imagine that you could soften into that a bit. So the second principle of yin yoga is to commit to stillness. So this stillness that we find doesn't necessarily have to be thinking of yourself super glued in a posture. I definitely want you to adjust, especially if you're not comfortable. But the stillness that we are trying to find is to combat that monkey mind that sometimes wants us to fidget. So it's that fidgeting. That moment that we find sensation, where we find ourselves a little bit uncomfortable, most of us kind of want to fidget to get away from it. We wonder, are we almost finished? Can I move? And these are things that definitely come up. It was one of the biggest challenges I found for myself with practicing yin was trying not to fidget. So try to just notice if you do fidget. Don't worry about it. Let it go, but do try to see if you can find stillness. So taking the second part of supported bridge, you're just going to lengthen your legs out onto the mat long. So letting your heels stay connected to the earth, but just walking the legs out. And if you get there and you're like, ooh, this is way too much for me, then just rebend the knees and plant the soles of the feet back down. Otherwise, let your legs come out long, and this will bring a little bit of extension into the front of the hips. So this opens the front of the hips, the hip flexors. So this is in a shape that we usually tend to take throughout the day. We tend to be at a 90-degree angle if we're sitting in desk chairs or sitting in a car. So this can oftentimes feel very good for people, and it's an area that tends to be tight. So we want to stretch that out. So going back to our key principles of yin yoga, number 3 is to stay a while. So we find that we take some time in these shapes. And part of the reason we take time is that we're really working into our denser tissues here. So our thicker tissues that are a little bit less elastic than our muscles. So we're looking more into the fascia, especially that encasing layer around the body. It can get tight, it can have scar tissue. So we're working on stretching that out, trying to keep it pliable and just gently working into it to a point, a little bit of the tendons and the ligaments as much as they really stretch or move, but sometimes it can feel good. But you are committing to stay usually for between 3 and 5 minutes in these shapes. And the last principle of yin yoga, which I find the most important, is to practice with compassion, acceptance, and non-attachment to the outcome. So every day is different. Some day you'll find your body really wants to work with you. Other days, maybe not. So what you could do yesterday might not be what you can do today, and that's absolutely fine. Again, listen to the feedback of your body. Don't attach to the outcome and just really practice with compassion for yourself. Know that oftentimes yin yoga can also bring up some emotional feelings in the body, and know that that's okay. You're in a safe space, especially because you're probably practicing at home. So know if those emotions come up, don't try to push them down. Just let them come out. Let yourself express them, let yourself feel them, and then know that most of the time they pass. When we tend to suppress things, they tend to just hang around until you actually deal with them. I found that a lot in my own life. So those are your principles of yin yoga as we're moving through class. Again, I'll be every once in a while letting you know the target areas that we're working on. So we're still in supported bridge here. Begin to bring the feet back in towards your body. So we're replanting the soles of the feet. And then very gently, one knee at a time, just hug the knees into the chest. Now, if you're up on that medium setting of the block, if you know what you're doing and you're okay with this, you can stay on the medium setting, but for many people, you'll want to turn it down to the lowest setting. We're going to work into Viparita Karani, or legs up the wall. So from here, we just let our legs come up into the sky. And you can always keep a bend in the knees. The feet can just be soft here. Arms can be doing whatever you would like. So this is a great posture to take on your own at home. Notice that because we have a prop here underneath us, it's taking the work out of the core. So we can do this without a prop, but it's usually a little bit more work for the core. This is a little bit more supportive. And know that you can absolutely take this shape with your legs literally up the wall. It's a great restorative posture, helps to calm the nervous system. This one's really nice to take right before bed. It also helps if you tend to get fluid pooling in the bottoms of your ankles or around your feet. So what I call cankles. This allows that fluid to come back into the body so that your lymph system and kidneys can excrete it. So helping to take a little bit of that swelling, and always feel free to circle the ankles a little bit. You don't have to stay completely still here. Beautiful. Finding our next variation, just bend the knees. And again, you let your knees come in towards your chest. So this one's called front groin lift. And so we're really going to open the inner thighs here. We're going to get a little bit into the groin. Now I'm going to say this isn't for everyone. So if you get into this and it doesn't work for you, feel free to find any variation that we've already done. Otherwise, cross your right ankle over your left and then let your feet land down on the earth. And then we're just going to find a cross-legged position like you would if you were seated in Sukhasana or easy pose. And we're going to let our knees come out. So the knife edge of the feet are on the floor and the knees are coming out to any amount. It might not be that far. So basically you're sitting in a easy cross-legged position, but you're reclined. So again, our target area is usually the fronts of the hips. So we're now externally rotating our hips, and we're also stretching out the inner groin. Hands could be onto the belly if you'd like, maybe one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly if that feels good. Just breathe into this one for a couple of moments. Maybe you're noticing areas of restriction that you felt already. Again, just sending the breath there and trying to soften into those areas. We're never trying to force into anything in yin yoga. We're mostly trying to soften into things. We're keeping a little bit of muscular engagement because we want to keep our joints safe, especially the lower back, the knees, and the hips. But other than that, we want to try to not fight with the body. We'll have an opportunity to take that on the other side. So take your hands to the outsides of your knees or thighs and just gently encourage them to close, and then hug the knees into the chest again. Know that you can always take a little rock right and left here if that feels good on the lower back, a little massage for the sacrum, kind of the backs of the hip points. And then this time we'll cross the left ankle over the right. And again, very slowly lower the feet down. And this is a good time for me to say that sometimes taking postures on different sides can feel very different. So know that this could be different on this side. Very slowly let the knees start to open out. You can kind of walk the feet farther away from one another if you're not feeling it, or you could keep them a little closer with a support. You could always bring blocks underneath the knees if you need. Otherwise, just try to surrender into this, letting the knees open. Again, our target area is the inner thigh and groin. Let's take a nice deep breath in through the nose. Open the mouth, exhale, and release. Again, bring the hands to the outsides of the thighs or knees and very gently allow those knees to lift up and close. Uncross the legs and then hug the knees into the chest one more time. We'll find a supported happy baby here, Nanda Balasana. Let the feet come up towards the sky, but this time keep the knees bent. You don't have to hold on to the legs here. The support of the bolster or block should hold you up, or you could hold on to the back of the thighs if you would like. It's up to you. Maybe a little rock right and left again if you would like. You're just gently letting those thighs come down on the belly. The knees are coming towards the armpits. Maybe opening out a little bit wider if that feels good for you. Beautiful, yogis. And then hug the knees into the chest one final time. You can give yourself a little squeeze here. And then allow the feet to come down onto the earth. We're going to work out of this by pressing into the soles of the feet, lifting the hips up enough so you can move your prop out from underneath you. And then from here, you can either stay where you are and just let the knees tent in, maybe widening the feet a little bit, or you can lengthen your legs out long if you would like. It's just kind of stretching everything out, finding a Shavasana for a moment. So we take transitional movements in between our shapes just to somewhat bring a little bit of movement back into the body. and just allow things to settle. We find stillness, but it's nice in between to be able to find a little bit of movement. And as you're ready, you'll hug your knees into your chest. You'll roll over onto your left or right side. Find fetal position for a moment. And just allow yourself to settle in. Maybe use the bicep as a pillow. Just letting the spine neutralize. And then eventually you'll press yourself up to meet me in a comfortable seat. And we'll talk about our next shape. So our next shape, if you have a blanket at home, it can be nice to sit on a blanket. So you can bring the blanket underneath your seat, and I wouldn't have it folded up too much, just enough so that it's kind of padding you. Now this next one, I'm going to show kind of from the front and from the side, just so that you get the idea. There are a lot of different variations of this one. So we're going to take a half hero's forward bend. So hero's pose in general, taking it on both sides, can be very intense. So this is really going to stretch out the tops of the thighs. This is our quadriceps. And we're going to find a forward bend here, but not all of us will be comfortable forward bending, so know that you don't have to. So I'm going to mirror you showing you this. So both feet are planted right now out in front of you. And then you're going to take your right hand to your right leg. You're going to lean over onto your left hip, and you're going to tuck that right leg behind you. Now, how far apart your heel is from your glute or how far apart your knee is away from your body is going to be completely up to you. You can find that maybe the heel is in really close and the shoelace part of the foot is down. You're definitely not sitting on your heel here. Or you could be a little bit farther away and a little bit more open. Also know that you can use a bolster underneath the seat if you would like to lift your hips up. So eventually you're going to bring that bolster more over towards the left hip, so just know that. You could also have a block underneath this hip. So I'm also going to show you from the side what this looks like. So you can work into this if you already have. Otherwise, again, the right foot is behind, the left foot is planted. And where this angles out is completely up to you. And again, you can be seated and lift the hips up a little bit. And that'll leave you a little bit more space sometimes for the hip. Now, know that you can stay exactly where you are. Just stay lifted here. You can also keep this knee bent and maybe you start to fold forward. If you're comfortable, you can lengthen your left leg out long. Maybe you don't have the bolster underneath. You can always bring the bolster on the leg and maybe a block for your forward fold underneath your forehead for a little bit of support. So again, that knee is open as much as you need it to be. Work into your variation of half hero's pose on this first side. So again, we're probably feeling this in the quadricep, which is the top or the thigh of the right leg. In compressing, you might feel this a little bit in the front of the left hip. You might also feel it in the hamstring of the left leg. And again, if the hamstring stretches too much, bend into the knee. If you're not sitting on the bolster, this is another option that you have here, bringing the bolster to the head for a little bit of support. Just breathe into wherever you are. Know that as your tissues open up, you can start to soften in a little bit farther into the forward fold, perhaps. Changing the block so it's down a little bit lower. Again, you're just allowing this to happen. You're not holding on and trying to pull anywhere. In fact, I like to have the backs of my hands on the earth and let the palms face up. 5 slow, deep breaths left in half heroes, forward bend on the first side. Perhaps approaching that skillful edge, using the feedback of your body to soften in just a little bit more. Perhaps just taking it to that edge of sensation. When you reach the end of your 5th breath, begin to walk your hands back in towards the body. You can set the props off to the side. First, I want you to rebend into the left knee, if you haven't yet, and plant the left sole of the foot down. We're going to work out of this carefully. I want you to hold on to your right shin with the right hand, lean over onto your left hip, and help that right leg to come forward. Once you do that, lengthen the legs out long. You can just bounce out the knees for a moment, or perhaps a little massage here for the tops of the legs, the knees. Beautiful. And then we'll start to work into the second side. So I'm going to turn to the side to show you this again. So we probably know a little bit more where we're going, but again, second side, it could be completely different. So make sure you're judging each side. You can always take a different variation on the second side. So plant both soles of the feet onto the earth first. Lean over onto your right hip, holding on to your left leg, bring it around to the back. And again, that where that knee is completely up to your body. Some of us are more comfortable a little bit more open here, and that's absolutely fine. I prefer to have my hips a little bit more closed, so my heel is pretty close to my glutes. And again, this is an option where I can bring any kind of lift underneath my hips if I'd like. And I want it a little bit more over towards my right hip. So I might stay exactly where I am here, feeling this nice stretch in the quadricep. I don't want to take it into the hamstring on this side, I just stay here. If I do want to take it into the hamstring, I'll start to lengthen my leg out long. And then I begin to walk myself forward. But remember, you can stay in any stages of this posture. So perhaps you want to be here, perhaps you lengthen the leg but stay lifted, or begin to walk yourself down. And again, be inventive with the props here. There is no wrong. So you could have a bolster on the straight right leg with a block on top of it to support the neck. Maybe it starts up a little higher. And just softening in. Again, we don't want to feel sensation in the knee here. If anything, we're working the hip. So we have internal rotation of this left hip happening right now. So it's interesting to find that we all articulate in our joints a little bit differently, and the hip joint is no different than any other. So some of us have our hip joints set a little bit more externally rotated, so they're turned a little bit more out to the side. Some of us are a little bit more narrow in our hips or going forward. Some of us almost have a little bit of internal rotation. So it'll completely depend where you are. And it can sometimes be said that women have more externally rotating hips, but that is not always the case. I tend to internally rotate a little bit more. So what this means is if you're an external rotator, you'll find that you really crave postures that open the hips. So like butterfly sitting, frog pose, if you know it, yogi squat, all of these things you enjoy that feels good in your body. For us, those of us that don't externally rotate, we find that a little bit more challenging. So this half heroes pose is an internally rotated posture, but we're only doing it on one side at a time. So notice right now, does this feel good to you? Does it feel easy or is it challenging? And either way, there are benefits. So if this is not an area you usually go because you're an external rotator, this is really helping to kind of balance out your body, bringing in internal rotation. If it is easy for you and feels good, then enjoy it. Continuing to soften in. Yogis, you have 5 slow, deep breaths left in half heroes forward bend. Perhaps you find even just a little bit more fold here. Again, slowly approaching the edge. Imagine you would be creeping up on a cliff. You don't want to go running right to that edge. Take it 85%, then maybe you can take it just a little bit further towards the end. When you find the end of your 5th breath, begin to walk your hands back in towards the body. And again, you can set the props off to the side. Bend into the right knee, plant the right sole of the foot down. Taking care of our knees here. We're going to work out of this slowly. So lean over onto your right hip, hold on to your left shin, and then let your guide your knee to come back forward. And then very slowly lengthen the legs out. Again, a little self massage can be nice, bouncing out the knees. If you'd like to take a reverse tabletop here or hammock pose, that can be nice sometimes. Plant the feet, fingertips face you or face the feet, and then lift the hips up a little and maybe sway them back and forth. Just taking some intuitive movement here, working out of that shape into that transition. All right, and then working into our next shape. So I just stretched my blanket out a little bit on the mat, but know again that you don't have to have a blanket here underneath you. It doesn't really matter. So first we're gonna have our feet planted on the earth. I would have a bolster and at least one block or something close to you. You might need it here. So we're gonna take 2 different postures and combine them together with this next one. So we're gonna somewhat multitask. So just to warm up a little bit, bring your feet a little wider and then one knee at a time, let your knees fall in. So this is called windshield wiping. So while we're doing this, I'll kind of tell you where we're going and then I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you face on first and then I'll turn to the side. I will mirror you so you'll look like me and I'll show you what it looks like from both angles. So we're going to take deer legs with sphinx body or upper body. So we're going to have deer and sphinx mixed together with an option then to take it into starfish twist. So this is really good for the outsides of the hips. So eventually, I'm going to have you swing your legs over towards your right. So your turn, so your face, your left hip is towards the front of the mat. And you're just going to let the knees then come down and find a 90-90 angle with the knees. So you can kind of adjust yourself as you want. As I set up here, I kind of want my thigh bone parallel to the short edge of the front of my mat. I'm finding a 90-degree here, so my hip and my knee line up, my knee and my ankle. And kind of same thing in the back, my hip and my knee and my ankle. You can flex the toes here if you would like, if that helps your knees to feel safer, but don't feel like you have to. And then from here, you can adjust as you need to. We're going to gently turn back towards the front. So you're going to bring your hands back towards the front. Once you do that, we're going to work down onto the elbows. So this is Sphinx with the upper body. Now, you might need to have blocks underneath the elbows if you don't want to come all the way down. I do not want this to hurt your lower back. So if it's hurting your lower back, less twist, please. Take yourself more towards the right corner of the mat if it's hurting there. Otherwise, you can come down and maybe you're even on your forearms. And as always in Sphinx, if you would like, you can always prop yourself up with a bolster underneath the chest. And you can walk your elbows out a little bit from the body if you need. You could let the head hang here, or you could have a block underneath the forehead. And this might be where you stay. So staying here, I'm going to turn to the side and show you the next place we could take it. So just what you see what it looks like from the side. So I've got my Sphinx and I've got my 90-90 or my deer legs. If everything feels okay, you can begin to start to straighten the legs out. So this takes it into starfish twist. So it's just a little bit of a deeper twist, a little bit more on the outer hip on the right side. So taking this to what works for you, and know that you can always come all the way down. There's some people that can, if they're really open in the outer hip, you might be able to come all the way down. I'll keep the time for you. Know that you can always tuck the chin into the chest and kind of stretch out the back of the neck if you would like. So I have a reading for you while you're relaxing in half sphinx with either deer or starfish. This is from Journey to the Heart. This is a book by Melody Beattie. And this passage is called Let Joy Find You. Somewhere along my journey, it happened, quietly, imperceptibly, almost without my knowing it. I relaxed, got comfortable with myself. I began enjoying myself, accepting life, liking life. I found joy. Somewhere along your journey, it will happen to you. Joy is a gift. It appears almost imperceptibly without warning, like a morning sunrise lighting our bedroom while we sleep. And it is almost as predictable. Keep doing the activities that bring healing and growth into your life. Keep loving yourself. Keep walking your path. Continue loving. Don't worry about finding joy, because somewhere along your journey, joy will find you. Yogis, you have 3 more slow, deep breaths in this combo shape. Maybe softening in just a little bit more, feeling this probably in the outer hip. When you reach the end of your 3rd breath, walk your hands back in towards your body so you can begin to rise up. Bend into the knees if you've taken that straight leg variation. So find your deer legs again, or 90-90. Set the prop off to the side. Just press into your hands. We're just going to come into a tabletop for a moment. So just kind of wag your hips right and left here like you're wagging your tail. You can stretch the legs out if that feels good to you. Maybe take a couple of cow and cat, a little undulation of the spine here if you would like. Again, just some transitional movements in between the sides. And then eventually you let your hips come down onto the heels, sit over to the right side. And this time, like, you let your knees come out to the left. So again, we're going to take a moment to set ourselves up here. So we find deer legs, or that 90-90. So I take my front of my right hip towards the front of the mat. And then I make sure that my hip and my knee are lined up, my knee and my ankle. And again, hip, knee, ankle here if you would like that variation. Know that you can always take less or more of this as well. And again, very slowly, just bring your hands around the front. And again, if you right away notice pulling in the sacrum, especially, or the SI joint, then I want you to walk your hands more to the side and you're kind of folding more over that bent front knee. But if it feels okay in your body, begin to work yourself down onto your elbows. So we're finding sphinx in the upper body with deer legs or stag legs. It's always okay to flex the toes if you want. Make sure you're not feeling this in the knees. So this is an asymmetrical posture. So we're doing different things here. So we have a little compression of the right front hip. And we have, again, internal rotation of the back left hip. So another internally rotated posture. You also might be feeling this on the outside of the right hip. So this is kind of IT band piriformis. This also stretches out the QL, which can be a hard area to stretch in the lower back. It also tends to be locked kind of short in people. So it's nice to be able to relax it. So from here, again, you have that option to straighten out the legs if you would like, to take this a little bit deeper into that starfish twist. Using the props as you would like, changing them out a little bit. And again, maybe notice this side is different than the other. Taking it to where you can. Do try to make sure that you're not scrunching into your shoulders here. So you do press into the earth a little bit, or you have the support of the bolster underneath you, so that you can keep your sides of the neck long. I like having a block underneath my forehead for support. Relaxing into your ability. So another reading from Journey to the Heart. This passage is called Learn to Relax. We need to learn how to relax, how to unwind. Find something that's relaxing, healing, soothing, and available to you. Sit in the sun, sit in the tub, take a trip to a nearby hot spring or mineral bath in your state. Perch atop a mountain or hill, taking in the view from above. Let yourself sit and soak it in for as long as you can. Let yourself be still for as long as you can. Move around a bit if you need to, then go back and try again. Don't do it just once. Try it often. Allow yourself to relax. Give yourself opportunities to unwind. Soon you'll learn how. Pay attention to what you think and feel when you try to relax. Watch as a neutral observer without judgment or reproach. What thoughts come to mind? How do you feel? What do you feel? Go as deeply into your thoughts and feelings as you are able. Sit quietly for as long as you can. When your body is done, it will tell you. Yogis, you have 3 slow, deep breaths left in this shape. Approaching your edge, softening in just a little bit more. When you reach the end of your 3rd breath, begin to walk your hands underneath the shoulders. If the legs are straight, I want you to bend the knees. So you find those deer legs again. You can put the props off to the side. And again, just somewhat find your way into tabletop position. If you'd like to take a downward dog here, feel free to do so. You can just kind of move it out. Use some intuition, some intuitive movements to stretch everything out, bring in some blood flow, maybe stretch one leg back and then the other. Beautiful, and we'll work into our next shape. So sitting down onto the heels, sit to the side. And we're gonna, again, kick our feet out in front of us. Now for this next one, our legs are going to be out long and wide. So this is called dragonfly. So oftentimes it's kind of nice to turn to the side on your mat so that your heels don't have to be on the earth. Know that you could also have a blanket underneath you. You could do it the length of the mat to pad you. Now for me, I like to show this in seated postures, and I'll show you from the side. So this is really easy to show in my body because I have an issue with this. So when I come into any kind of forward fold with hip opening, what I have here is you can see that my tailbone's kind of tucked underneath itself here. So I've kind of rounded in my back, and if I go to forward fold, where I'm going to feel this is in my lower back. That's not our target area. That's not where we want to feel it. Where we really want the target area here is the back of the hamstrings, the back of the legs, the calves, and a little bit of opening here. So we really want to not feel that pull on the lower back that often happens. So what we're looking for here is called an anterior tilt. Now, a game changer for me, what I found is lifting my hips up. So you could be on any kind of pillow or block. If you lift your hips up onto something that elevates your hips, what you're then able to do is find a different tilt of the pelvis. So I've now been able to come into an anterior tilt. So my tailbone's not so much tucked underneath me anymore. I'm able to lengthen it out a little bit. And as I come forward, you can see I'm not having to use the lower back here or feel the strain. So the legs can be as far apart as you'd like, and I'm going to now turn to the front to show you. So this is dragonfly again. In vinyasa, we call it Upavishta Konasana, but here it is dragonfly in yin. So maybe your legs aren't too far apart, and if your hamstrings are just not having any part of it, bend your knees. Just bend your knees, take it out of the hamstrings, and you can still fold forward. But otherwise, if you'd like to feel it in the hamstrings, you open as far as you can. Now here, if you're sitting on a bolster, maybe you use the blocks to stack up, and I'm going to put these underneath my forehead. You can always lower them down as you soften. Maybe they come on underneath the elbows if you would like. So find your variation of dragonfly pose. And again, we're softening in here. So our target areas are the backs of the legs, the hamstrings, the calf, also the ankles, the Achilles. And we've got external rotation. And we're also stretching out the inner groin or the inner thigh here. So just softening into what you find. And if you absolutely find that this posture is completely inaccessible for you to take seated, especially if you have any kind of tailbone injury or a sacroiliac problem, know that you can also take this on the wall. So you could bring your legs up the wall and just let your legs come out to the side. So you have the support of the wall. I won't show that, but if you've ever done a wall sequence class of mine, we usually do wall dragonfly. So that can feel really nice. You can feel more opening there. So know if seated postures are just not your jam, take it against the wall. So taking your time to soften in. Again, we'll be here for some time. So allowing the opening to happen here. Yogis, you have 5 deep breaths left. In dragonfly pose, can you soften in just a little bit more, allowing for a little bit more opening in the hips? When you reach the end of your 5th breath, walk your hands back in towards your body. You can kind of slide off the bolster if you would like. And take your hands underneath the knees and very gently just help your knees to kind of come in and close for a moment. We'll just counter that by letting our knees knock in. And again, if you'd like, some windshield wipes here can feel nice. So yin asks us a lot of times to get into our hips, and our hips are considered anything from the knees all the way up to the rib cage because it's all connected here. So really working into these areas that sometimes we don't get into in our daily lives. So we're looking to kind of balance things out. All right, so bringing your feet out in front of you, we'll work into our last shape, and it's going to be an alternative to Shavasana. This one's really nice. It's called constructive rest. Now, know that you do not have to have the bolster, but if you do have some kind of a cushion, you can put at the end of your mat. That can be nice. The blanket can be under the body if you'd like, but it doesn't have to be. Let me move some of this really quick just to make sure you can see. So what I do is I bring the balls of my feet onto the bolster. So I've kind of got my instep against the bolster here, and I want my knees at about a 90-degree angle. The width can be hips width. I'm going to have you bring your knees in, so maybe you want to bring your feet a little bit wider. That's absolutely fine too. But just kind of feel the balls of your feet on the bolster, and then lower down onto your elbows, and then lower down onto your back. So this is constructive rest. And again, you can let the knees kind of tent in. So we've done a lot of external rotation today. So this is just going to kind of neutralize everything. So this is an amazing shape. Constructive rest releases the psoas, which can be a really hard thing to do. The psoas is one of our major hip flexors. It's also really tight. It's a core muscle. So our psoas works almost constantly. It's what helps us to locomote, so it helps us to lift our legs up to move. So the psoas is almost always on. So when we can release it, what that does is it has a direct link into your nervous system. So releasing the psoas helps to bring you into your parasympathetic nervous system, so into that rest and digest. Most of the time we live in our sympathetic nervous system where we're always fight or flight. So the psoas plays a huge role in that because it needs to be ready to move. But in releasing it, that lets our brain realize, oh, we can relax. We don't have to be on. There isn't a saber-toothed tiger that's going to chase us, so we can just chill. This one also helps to release the ankles, the feet, the Achilles tendon. And you can lengthen out the legs a little bit if you would prefer. It's kind of up to you. See what feels good for you. Play with it a little bit. Then I'll also offer one arm variation here. Not everyone likes this, so you can always have the arms down by the side. You could have cactus arms. But if you'd like a little shoulder stretch, just cross the elbows kind of on the chest. So the elbows are crossed here, and then I like to flip my palms up. So some people, I think this makes them feel claustrophobic. So if that makes you feel claustrophobic, then don't do it. But if you can bring your elbows down a little bit and you're comfortable like this, then feel free to take this variation. I will let you know when you're about halfway through. And so if you've taken the crossed arm variation, you'll uncross and recross the other way. So just release down into constructive rest, just allowing the shape to help you to relax. This one also neutralizes the lower back and the neck. So as you're releasing down into this one, I have a final reading from Journey to the Heart. This is one of my favorite ones. And this passage is called Discover the Power of Vulnerability. A new kind of power will emerge from vulnerability. The more honest we are with ourselves about how we feel and what we really think, the more power we will have. We may have once thought that being powerful meant not giving in to what we felt, what we thought, or who we really were. But that attitude didn't garner power for us. It caused life, the universe, and us to continue creating situations that would help open our hearts, help us to feel, help us learn the lesson of vulnerability. The sooner we become honest with ourselves, the sooner we can be honest with others. The sooner we become honest with ourselves, the more quickly we'll grow and move on to a new place. Become vulnerable, at least with yourself. Be honest about what you think and how you feel. Write it, speak it, feel it, release it. Then you will know where to go, when to go. What you are to do next will emerge naturally, quietly, and clearly. Try being absolutely honest. Reveal your most private feelings to yourself. It's a new kind of power, a different kind of power. It is a spiritual power, the power of opening the heart. We're about halfway through constructive rest. So if you've taken that arm variation, just switch which arm is in front. Again, adding in a little opening in between the shoulder blades if you've taken that variation. As you soften in further, take a full body scan. Notice if you're still clenching the jaw, can you release it? Can you release the tension in between the eyebrows, the forehead? Imagine almost as if you could melt into the mat. You're being completely supported here. Yogis, take a nice deep breath in through the nose, fill all the way up. And then open the mouth, exhale, and release. You can undo the arms if you've taken that variation. Maybe just lengthen the legs out long. You can kind of kick the bolster out, or you could bring it underneath the knees if you would like. Lengthen the legs out long. Take just a brief Shavasana, just to kind of reset. Let the effects of your practice wash over you. Just take note, take a full body scan. How does your body feel? Does it feel differently than when you began? As you moved through practice, did you meet resistance? Could you feel tension in your body? Were you able to not judge that and just use it as information to maybe move through it? Any feedback that you learn from your body, any ability to turn inward that is truly doing the work, that is truly doing the yoga. And as you're ready, just gently hug your knees into your chest. You could rock right and left here if you would like, if that feels good. Eventually, you'll find yourself rocked over onto the left or right side, whichever is calling to you. Use your bicep as a pillow, find fetal position. The closer you hug your knees in towards your chest, the more you take that out of the lower back. So feel free to really curl yourself in here. Letting your spine reset, kind of orienting yourself. And as slowly as you would like, you can press yourself up to a comfortable seat. Know that you're practicing at home, so you could take a longer Shavasana if you would like. Otherwise, pressing yourself to a seat to close out our practice together. Sitting on a prop if you would like, either in your easy Sukhasana, or you could sit on the heels in Hero's Pose if you would prefer. If you'd like, finding Anjali Mudra, so bringing the palms together, thumbs towards the sternum, sternum towards the thumbs, and then you can close your eyes and tuck your chin into your chest. Just take a couple of breaths here. Imagine something that you felt grateful for or you feel grateful for moving through your practice. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's a situation, maybe it's a hot fudge sundae you're having later or you had last night. It could be anything you'd like. So I did read a little bit about vulnerability today, and I always like to recommend if you'd like a recommendation for a TED Talk or books or podcasts, Brene Brown is wonderful. So she does quite a few talks on the power of vulnerability, and she has a book of the same title. The TED Talk she does, The Power of Vulnerability, really changed my life. So again, that's Brene Brown. Feel free to look her up. For now, thank you for practicing yoga with me. The light and love in me always sees and honors the light and love in each and every one of you. Namaste, yogis.